goals don't care how you feel. Winners take action no matter what. This audiobook will teach you how to stay disciplined for life, no matter the obstacles. If you're tired of falling off track, it's time to break the cycle and take control. The Winner Formula. Audiobook. Introduction. Motivation is a trap. You know exactly what I'm talking about. That surge of energy you feel after watching an inspiring video or reading a powerful quote. That rush of determination that makes you believe this time will be different. This time you'll stick to your goals. This time you'll follow through. But where are you 3 days later? A week? A month? The harsh truth is that motivation is nothing more than emotional candy. A quick hit that feels good but leaves you crashing harder than before. And while you're riding these waves of inspiration up and down, the real achievers, the ones actually crossing finish lines and reaching milestones, are quietly building something far more powerful. Unshakable discipline. You see, winners understand a fundamental truth that most people never grasp. Success isn't about feeling ready. It's not about waiting for the perfect moment or the right mood. It's about showing up, day after day, especially when you don't feel like it. Right now, you're probably thinking about all the times you've started strong, only to fall off track. The diets that lasted until the weekend. The workout routines abandoned by week 2. The projects left unfinished. Each attempt has left its mark, each failure reinforcing the story that maybe you just don't have what it takes. But here's what you need to understand. The problem isn't you. The problem is that you've been playing the wrong game. You've been chasing motivation when you should have been building discipline. This audiobook will show you how to win that game, not through more pep talks or temporary inspiration, but through a proven formula that transforms consistency from something you struggle with into something that defines who you are. Chapter 1. The Motivation Lie. Let me tell you a hard truth. You're not struggling with discipline because you're weak. You're struggling because you've been sold a lie. The lie that you need to feel motivated before taking action. The lie that successful people wake up every day burning with passion and drive. The lie that consistency comes from constant inspiration. Think about your own pattern. How many times have you started something with incredible enthusiasm? Maybe it was a new workout routine, a business idea, or a creative project. That first day felt amazing. You were filled with energy, possibility, and determination. This time would be different. But then reality hit. The excitement faded. The work got harder. And suddenly, you found yourself waiting for that spark of motivation to return before taking the next step. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into another abandoned goal. Here's what's really happening. Your brain is working exactly as it's designed to work. Motivation isn't meant to last. It's a biological response that evolved to help our ancestors take immediate action in moments of opportunity or danger. It's like a sprint, powerful but brief. Studies in neuroscience have revealed that motivation operates through dopamine, often called the reward chemical. But dopamine isn't actually about pleasure. It's about anticipation. That's why you feel most motivated before you start something new. Your brain is flooding with dopamine, creating that rush of excitement and possibility. But once you begin the actual work, that chemical surge diminishes. This isn't a flaw in your character. It's your brain functioning exactly as nature intended. Observe the story of Kobe Bryant, one of basketball's most legendary figures. What set Kobe apart wasn't natural talent or sporadic bursts of inspiration. It was his infamous 4 a.m. club, his commitment to starting training while other players were still sleeping. But here's what most people miss about Kobe's routine. He didn't wake up at 4 a.m. because he felt motivated. He woke up at 4 a.m. because he had built a system that removed the need for motivation entirely. In interviews, Kobe explained that he never questioned whether he would train. It wasn't a decision he made each morning, it was simply what he did, as automatic as breathing. He had transcended the need for motivation by building unshakable habits. This is where your transformation begins. Instead of waiting to feel ready, you need to build systems that make action automatic. The key is removing decision points, those moments where you negotiate with yourself about whether to take action. Think about brushing your teeth. You don't wait for motivation to do it. You don't stand in the bathroom debating whether you feel like it. You just do it because it's part of who you are. This is the level of automaticity you need to develop with any behavior that matters to you. Take Ethan, a software developer who struggled with procrastination on his side projects. Every few months, he'd get excited about a new idea, work on it intensely for a week or two, then gradually stop as his motivation faded. The cycle repeated for years until he finally understood. Waiting for motivation was the problem. Instead of relying on inspiration, Ethan built a simple system. Every day at 7 p.m., he would sit at his desk and work on his project for just 25 minutes. No exceptions, no negotiations. The time was short enough to feel manageable but consistent enough to create momentum. He didn't worry about feeling inspired or productive. He just showed up. Within 6 months, Ethan had completed more than he had in the previous 3 years combined. Not because he found some secret source of endless motivation, but because he stopped requiring motivation to take action. Now it's your turn. For the next 7 days, choose one small action that matters to you. It could be writing for 10 minutes, doing 5 push-ups, reading 1 page of a book, anything that moves you toward your goals. The only rule is this: you must do it at the same time each day, regardless of how you feel. Don't make it big. Don't make it complicated. Just make it consistent. Show up for 7 days straight and prove to yourself that action is a choice, not a feeling. Your transformation from motivation-dependent to discipline-driven starts now. Chapter 2. The Identity Shift. Becoming disciplined instead of trying to be. What if you never had to force yourself to take action again? What if discipline wasn't something you needed to chase, but simply became who you are at your core? Right now, you might be thinking this sounds impossible. After all, you've spent years trying to be more consistent, more focused, more disciplined. But here's the truth that's going to change everything. You've been fighting the wrong battle. The real reason you struggle with discipline isn't because you lack willpower or determination. It's because you're trying to change your behaviors without first changing your identity. Every time you tell yourself, "I need to be more disciplined," you're unconsciously reinforcing the belief that discipline is something foreign to you, something you have to force or fake. This creates an exhausting internal conflict. One part of you is trying to build new habits, while another part still identifies as someone who struggles with consistency. It's like trying to drive with one foot on the gas and one on the brake. No wonder you feel stuck. The world's most disciplined individuals understand something crucial. Lasting change doesn't come from willing yourself to act differently. It comes from becoming someone different. When you shift your identity, the actions naturally follow. Think about how you see yourself right now. Do you identify as someone who tries to be disciplined, or as someone who simply is disciplined? The difference might seem subtle, but it's everything. Your brain is constantly working to maintain consistency between your actions and your self-image. When you see yourself as someone who struggles with discipline, your brain will actually work against your efforts to change, because inconsistency feels more natural to your current identity. This explains why motivation and willpower eventually fail. They're tools for forcing yourself to act against your identity, rather than expressing who you truly are. It's like trying to speak a language you don't know. You can memorize phrases, but you'll never be fluent until you start thinking in that language. Look at Arnold Schwarzenegger's transformation from a skinny Austrian teenager to one of the most successful bodybuilders in history. In his autobiography, Arnold reveals something fascinating. He didn't just train like a champion bodybuilder. He became one in his mind first. Long before he had the physique, he saw himself as Mr. Olympia. He walked like a champion, carried himself like a champion, made decisions like a champion. This wasn't just positive thinking or visualization. It was a fundamental shift in identity that made his legendary discipline effortless. When you identify as a champion, you don't need motivation to train. It's simply what champions do. You don't debate whether to push through difficult workouts. That's just who you are. The same principle applies to any area of life where you want to build unshakable discipline. Instead of trying to force new behaviors, you need to become someone for whom those behaviors are natural expressions of identity. This is where most people get it backwards. They think, once I consistently work out, then I'll be an athlete. Or, once I write every day, then I'll be a writer. But that's like saying, once I speak perfect French, then I'll be French. Identity drives behavior, not the other way around. The key is to adopt the identity first, then align your actions with who you've chosen to become. This isn't fake it till you make it. It's a deliberate decision to stop waiting for external validation and start claiming who you want to be. Take Mia, a marketing consultant who dreamed of building her own agency. For years, she jumped between clients, starting strong but eventually dropping the ball as projects got challenging. She saw herself as someone who struggles with follow-through, and this identity became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Everything changed when Mia made a simple but powerful shift. Instead of trying to become more disciplined, she decided to identify as someone who finishes what they start. She stopped saying, "I need to be better at following through," and started saying, "I am someone who sees things through to completion." This wasn't just positive self-talk. Mia began making small decisions that aligned with her new identity. When faced with a challenging client project, she didn't ask herself if she felt motivated to continue. Instead, she asked, what would someone who finishes what they start do in this situation? The answer was always clear because it wasn't about forcing herself anymore. It was about being true to who she had chosen to become. Within 6 months, Mia had not only maintained her client relationships, but had grown her business beyond what she thought possible. Not because she found some magical source of discipline, but because she had become someone for whom follow-through was non-negotiable. Your transformation begins with the same shift. Stop trying to change your behaviors and start changing who you are. Instead of saying, "I want to work out more," claim the identity, "I am an athlete." Rather than, "I should write regularly," declare, "I am a writer." Instead of, "I need to be more disciplined," simply be, "I am disciplined." This isn't about perfection. Even professional athletes have days when they don't feel like training. The difference is, they don't let those feelings change who they are. Their identity remains constant, which makes their actions consistent. Start small. Choose one area of your life where you want to build unshakable discipline. Write down the identity you want to embody. Not what you want to do, but who you want to be. Then prove it to yourself with one small action each day that aligns with that identity. If you've chosen, "I am an athlete," do one push-up. If it's "I am a writer," write one sentence. The action itself matters less than the fact that you're acting in alignment with your chosen identity. Each small win reinforces who you're becoming. Chapter 3. The Power of Tiny Actions. Why Less is More. You've been lied to about what it takes to build unshakable discipline. The myth that's holding you back isn't about your capabilities or your willpower. It's about scale. Right now, you probably believe that meaningful progress requires massive action. That to be truly disciplined, you need to make dramatic changes and maintain heroic levels of effort. This belief isn't just wrong. It's the very reason you keep falling off track. The truth about discipline is counterintuitive. The smaller your committed action, the more likely you are to maintain it. This isn't about lowering your standards or settling for less. It's about understanding how sustainable change really works. Think about the last time you tried to transform your life. Maybe you decided to work out for an hour every day, write 2,000 words, or completely overhaul your diet. How long did it last? The pattern is always the same. Initial excitement, followed by overwhelm, then inevitable burnout. You're not alone. This is the natural result of trying to force too much change too quickly. It's like trying to lift a weight that's too heavy. You might manage it once or twice through sheer willpower, but you'll never maintain it long term. The secret to unshakable discipline isn't doing more. It's doing something, consistently, no matter how small. This is where Jerry Seinfeld's story becomes particularly illuminating. Early in his career, before becoming one of the most successful comedians in history, Seinfeld developed a simple system: write one joke every day. Not an hour of writing, not 10 jokes, just one. This might seem too easy to matter, but here's what happened. That single daily commitment became non-negotiable. There was never a legitimate excuse not to write one joke. Even on his worst days, he could manage this tiny action. And over time, this consistent practice compounded into mastery. The genius of this approach wasn't just its simplicity, it was how it rewired his relationship with discipline. Instead of wrestling with motivation every day, trying to force himself to write for hours, he focused on showing up. The size of the action became irrelevant compared to the power of never breaking the chain. This principle, which I call the power of tiny actions, works because it aligns with how your brain actually builds new habits. When you try to make massive changes, you trigger your brain's threat response. It perceives the dramatic shift as dangerous and fights to maintain the status quo. But tiny actions fly under this radar. They're too small to trigger resistance. This is where the 2-minute rule comes in. Instead of committing to an hour-long workout, commit to putting on your gym clothes and doing one push-up. Rather than promising to meditate for 30 minutes, commit to taking 3 conscious breaths. Instead of trying to write a chapter, commit to opening your laptop and typing 1 sentence. These actions might seem insignificant, but they serve a crucial purpose. They establish the pattern of showing up. And showing up, it turns out, is the hardest part of discipline. Once you're in motion, continuing becomes much easier. Take Daniel, an engineer who dreamed of becoming a musician. For years, he told himself he needed to practice guitar for at least an hour to make it worth it. The result? His guitar gathered dust while he waited for the perfect moment to start a serious practice routine. Everything changed when Daniel applied the 2-minute rule. His new commitment was almost laughably small. Pick up the guitar and play 1 chord progression. That's it. No pressure to practice for hours or master complex pieces. Just pick it up and play something, anything, for 2 minutes. The first week, something interesting happened. Most days, once he picked up the guitar, he played for longer than 2 minutes. Not because he forced himself, but because starting was no longer daunting. Some days, he still only played for 2 minutes, and that was perfectly fine. The goal wasn't to practice for hours, it was to maintain the habit of showing up. 6 months later, Daniel had developed a consistent practice routine that averaged 30 minutes daily, not because he pushed himself, but because he removed the pressure that was causing him to avoid practice altogether. His progress accelerated not by doing more, but by never missing a day. This approach works because it separates the habit-building phase from the performance phase. Right now, your goal isn't to achieve your ultimate vision, it's to establish the habit of showing up. Once that foundation is solid, you can gradually expand the scope of your actions. Your challenge for the next 5 days is this. Choose one habit you want to build and reduce it to its smallest possible version. Make it so easy it seems ridiculous to skip it. If you want to read more, commit to reading 1 page. If you want to exercise, commit to 1 push-up. If you want to write, commit to 1 sentence. Remember, the goal isn't to achieve greatness in 5 days. It's to prove to yourself that you can show up consistently. Greatness will follow naturally from there. Chapter 4. Breaking free from the all-or-nothing trap. The moment plays out like a familiar movie scene. You're standing there, staring at your broken streak. Maybe it's the workout you skipped yesterday, the meditation practice you missed, or the writing session that never happened. In that moment, a dangerous thought creeps in. I've already messed up. What's the point of continuing? This isn't just about missing a day. It's about the crushing weight of perfectionism that turns one missed day into complete surrender. You've been there before. That spiral from a minor slip to total abandonment. One missed workout becomes a month of avoiding the gym. One skipped writing session turns into shelving your book project entirely. The all-or-nothing trap is discipline's silent killer. It's the voice that whispers, if you can't do it perfectly, don't do it at all. And it's lying to you. Think about this. If you were driving and got a flat tire, would you get out and slash the other 3? Of course not. Yet this is exactly what you do when you let one missed day derail your entire journey. You're not just accepting a temporary setback, you're actively sabotaging your progress. Dwayne, The Rock. Johnson's story perfectly illustrates the power of breaking free from this mindset. Despite his image as the epitome of discipline, Johnson openly discusses days when life disrupts his famous 4 a.m. workouts. Travel, filming schedules, family obligations, they all create obstacles. But here's what makes him different. He never lets one missed workout spiral into abandonment. During the filming of Jumanji, Johnson's schedule was brutal. One particularly exhausting day, he missed his morning training session, something that would send many people into a guilt spiral. Instead, he simply adjusted. He hit the gym at midnight after filming Wrapped. Was it ideal? Number? Was it his usual routine? Definitely not. But it maintained his momentum. This wasn't about being perfect. It was about refusing to let one disruption become a permanent derailment. Johnson's approach reveals a crucial truth. Consistency isn't about never falling. It's about how quickly you get back up. The science behind this phenomenon is fascinating. Research in behavioral psychology shows that when we break a streak or violate our standards, we experience what's called the what the hell effect. Once we feel we've failed, we're likely to abandon our goals completely. This explains why one cookie often leads to eating the entire box, or why missing one workout frequently turns into weeks of inactivity. But here's where winners separate themselves. They understand that progress isn't linear. They expect disruptions and plan for them. Instead of aiming for perfect streaks, they focus on perfect recoveries. This is where the never miss twice rule becomes your secret weapon. The rule is simple. You can miss one day, but you never miss 2 in a row. This single principle eliminates the all-or-nothing mindset by making recovery automatic. Consider Elena, a marketing executive who struggled with maintaining her fitness routine. Like many, she would start strong, exercising 5 days a week. But the first missed workout would trigger intense guilt, leading to complete abandonment. This cycle repeated for years until she discovered the never miss twice rule. Instead of aiming for perfect attendance, Elena focused on perfect recovery. When travel disrupted her routine, she didn't spiral into weeks of inactivity. She simply ensured that she never missed 2 days in a row. Sometimes this meant doing just 5 minutes of stretching in a hotel room. Other times it meant a quick bodyweight workout between meetings. The exercises weren't always ideal, but they maintained her momentum. Within 6 months, Elena had achieved better results than ever before. Not because she never missed a day, but because she never let one missed day become 2. Her success wasn't built on perfection, it was built on resilience. This approach works because it aligns with reality. Life will disrupt your plans. You will miss days. The question isn't if these disruptions will happen, it's how you'll respond when they do. The key is to remove the emotional weight from these moments. A missed day isn't a moral failure or a sign of weakness. It's simply data, information that helps you adjust and improve. When you stop treating disruptions as disasters, you can start treating them as opportunities to practice recovery. Your challenge for this week is simple but powerful. If you miss a day of your chosen habit, make the next day non-negotiable. No matter how small the action, show up. This isn't about perfection. It's about proving to yourself that one slip doesn't have to become a fall. Remember, the only way to truly fail is to quit completely. Everything else is just feedback. Chapter 5. The Unstoppable Force of Momentum. Picture a snowball at the top of a mountain. Not an avalanche, not a boulder, just a tiny sphere of packed snow. Once it starts rolling, something magical happens. With each rotation, it picks up more snow, growing larger, moving faster. What started as something you could hold in your hand becomes an unstoppable force. This is the power of momentum, and it's the secret weapon of every highly disciplined person you admire. But here's what most people get wrong. They wait for momentum to find them. They expect motivation to strike like lightning, igniting their journey with electric inspiration. The truth? Momentum isn't something you wait for. It's something you build, one tiny action at a time. Think about the last time you felt stuck. Maybe you were staring at a blank page, knowing you needed to write, or standing in front of your workout clothes, feeling too tired to move. In those moments, starting feels impossible. but that's because you're thinking about momentum backward. The fundamental law of momentum is this: motion creates emotion, not the other way around. Science has proven this repeatedly. When you take action, no matter how small, your brain releases dopamine, the motivation molecule. This chemical reward makes the next action easier, and the next one easier still. Before you know it, you're not pushing yourself to move. You're trying to hold yourself back. Elon Musk's approach to building Tesla illustrates this principle perfectly. When most automotive companies spend years perfecting designs before production, Musk took a different approach. He started with the Roadster, an imperfect but functional electric car. Instead of waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect design, he focused on getting something moving. Each iteration built momentum. The Roadster led to the Model S, which led to the Model 3, each version building on the lessons and momentum of the last. When critics said electric cars would never work, Musk didn't argue, he just kept the ball rolling. Today, Tesla's momentum has transformed the entire automotive industry. The key wasn't starting big, it was starting small and never letting the movement stop. This same principle applies to personal discipline. The size of your first step doesn't matter nearly as much as ensuring that step leads to another, and another, and another. This is where most people sabotage themselves. They try to start too big, lose steam, and come to a complete stop. Remember, a rocket uses most of its fuel just to break free from Earth's gravity. But once it's in motion, it requires far less energy to maintain its course. Your discipline works the same way. Let's look at Jake, an accountant who dreamed of writing a novel. Like many aspiring writers, he kept waiting for the perfect moment, when he had more time, more energy, more inspiration. He set ambitious goals. Write for 2 hours every morning, complete 2,000 words daily. But these large commitments created resistance, and he never started. Everything changed when Jake discovered the power of momentum through microactions. Instead of committing to hours of writing, he promised himself just 1 sentence per day. It seemed almost laughably small, but that was the point. There was zero resistance to writing 1 sentence. Something interesting happened. Most days after writing that first sentence, Jake found himself wanting to write more. Some days he wrote pages. Other days, it really was just 1 sentence. But here's what mattered. The ball never stopped rolling. Within 6 months, Jake had completed a rough draft of his novel. Not because he forced himself to write for hours, but because he never let the momentum die. 1 sentence kept leading to another, day after day, until those small actions compounded into something significant. This is the paradox of momentum. The smaller you start, the easier it is to keep going. The easier it is to keep going, the bigger your results become. But there's another crucial aspect of momentum that most people miss: the power of tracking. When you can see your progress, even in tiny increments, it creates a psychological reward that fuels further action. Studies in behavioral psychology have shown that visible progress, no matter how small, triggers the brain's reward centers. This creates a positive feedback loop. Action leads to progress. Progress creates satisfaction. Satisfaction motivates more action. Think of it like compound interest for your habits. Every small win builds upon the last, creating an exponential growth curve. But just like financial compound interest, the magic happens when you never withdraw from your momentum account. This is why consistency trumps intensity every time. A person who does 1 push-up daily for a year will achieve more than someone who does 100 push-ups once and quits. The power isn't in the individual action, it's in the unbroken chain of actions. So how do you apply this in your own life? Start by identifying 1 goal you want to achieve. Now break it down to its smallest possible component. Something so easy it feels almost meaningless. Want to get in shape? Start with 1 push-up. Want to meditate? Start with 1 breath. Want to write? Start with 1 word. The key is to remove all resistance. Make it so easy that you can't say no. Then focus all your energy not on doing more, but on never breaking the chain of motion. Chapter 6. Decision-proof your discipline. Every time you make a decision, you're spending precious mental currency. Right now, your brain is juggling over 35,000 decisions per day, From what to eat for breakfast to when to tackle that important project. Each choice, no matter how small, drains your mental energy like a leaky battery. This is why willpower fails. You're not lacking discipline. You're exhausting it on unnecessary decisions. Think about your morning routine. How many micro decisions do you make before even starting your most important work? What to wear, when to exercise, what to eat, which task to tackle first. Each choice chips away at your mental resources. By the time you face a crucial decision about your goals, your brain is already depleted. But here's the game-changing truth. The most disciplined people don't have superhuman willpower. They've simply mastered the art of eliminating decisions. Take Barack Obama during his presidency. In a 2012 interview with Vanity Fair, he revealed why he only wore gray or blue suits. "I'm trying to pare down decisions. I don't want to make decisions about what I'm eating or wearing, because I have too many other decisions to make." This wasn't just personal preference, it was strategic brilliance. By eliminating wardrobe decisions, Obama preserved his mental energy for matters of national importance. He understood that decision fatigue is real, and every choice we make depletes our ability to make good decisions later. The science behind this is fascinating. Researchers found that self-control, the cornerstone of discipline, operates like a muscle. Each decision you make fatigues this muscle, making subsequent choices harder. This explains why even strong-willed people often break their diets in the evening or skip workouts after a day of demanding choices. Steve Jobs took this principle to the extreme with his iconic black turtleneck uniform. Mark Zuckerberg followed suit with his gray t-shirts. These weren't fashion statements. They were strategic moves to eliminate decision fatigue and preserve mental energy for innovation. But this isn't just about clothing. Every area of your life where you can eliminate decisions becomes a fortress of automatic discipline. Let's break down how this works in practice. When you pre-decide, meaning you make decisions in advance, you bypass the emotional negotiation that happens in the moment. You're no longer asking yourself, "Should I work out today?" Because you've already decided when and where you'll exercise. The only question becomes following through on a decision you've already made. Take Lisa, a marketing executive who struggled with consistency in her fitness routine. Every morning she'd debate whether to hit the gym, what workout to do, and what to wear. These seemingly small decisions created enough friction to derail her goals regularly. Everything changed when she eliminated these choice points. She laid out her workout clothes the night before, pre-planned her workouts for the week, and set a non-negotiable schedule. The result? Her gym attendance tripled, not because she suddenly found more willpower, but because she removed the decisions that were draining it. The key is to identify your decision points, those moments where choice creates friction, and eliminate them systematically. Think of it like building a railroad track for your habits. Once the track is laid, the train, your actions, simply follows the predetermined path. Here's where most people get it wrong. They try to rely on willpower to make good decisions in the moment. But willpower is a finite resource. Instead of trying to make better decisions, eliminate the need for decisions altogether. Your environment plays a crucial role in this strategy. If you want to eat healthier, don't stock junk food and then try to resist it. Remove it entirely, so there's no decision to make. If you want to write every morning, set up your workspace the night before, so when you wake up, there's no deciding where or how to begin. The challenge I'm giving you now is simple but powerful. For the next 3 days, identify and eliminate 3 decisions from your daily routine. Maybe it's laying out your clothes the night before, pre-planning your meals, or scheduling your most important work for specific time blocks. The goal is to make discipline your default setting by removing the choices that drain your willpower. Remember, discipline isn't about having more willpower than everyone else. It's about needing less willpower because you've made success automatic. Chapter 7. Rewiring your brain for real rewards. You're sitting there, determined to work on that important project, but your hand instinctively reaches for your phone. Just one quick check turns into an hour of mindless scrolling. Sound familiar? This isn't a failure of discipline. It's your brain's reward system being hijacked by modern technology. Think about it. Why can you binge watch an entire series without effort, yet struggle to focus on your goals for even 30 minutes? The answer lies in a powerful brain chemical called dopamine, and understanding how it works will transform your approach to discipline forever. Every time you get a notification, every like on social media, every short video you watch, these create tiny bursts of dopamine, training your brain to crave quick, effortless rewards. It's like feeding your brain candy all day and then wondering why vegetables taste bland. The more you indulge in these artificial highs, the harder it becomes to find satisfaction in meaningful work. Johann Hari's story perfectly illustrates this modern crisis. As a successful author, his livelihood depended on focused writing. Yet he found himself increasingly unable to concentrate, constantly distracted by the siren call of social media and endless digital entertainment. His attention span had shrunk to that of a goldfish, a common symptom of our dopamine-saturated world. For his book Stolen Focus, Hari conducted a radical experiment. He went to Provincetown, Massachusetts, for 3 months, deliberately disconnecting from all social media, smartphones, and quick-hit entertainment. The first few weeks were excruciating. His brain, accustomed to constant stimulation, rebelled against the quiet. But gradually, something remarkable happened. Without the constant barrage of artificial dopamine hits, his brain began to reset. Reading became enjoyable again. Writing felt satisfying rather than torturous. Most importantly, he rediscovered his ability to focus deeply for hours, something he thought he had lost forever. The science behind this transformation is fascinating. Research shows that excessive exposure to high-stimulation activities actually downregulates your dopamine receptors. It's like turning up the volume on your headphones so high that normal conversation becomes impossible to hear. Your brain becomes desensitized to natural rewards, making disciplined work feel increasingly difficult. But here's the empowering truth. This process is reversible. Your brain can relearn to find pleasure in meaningful achievement rather than empty distraction. The key is understanding that discipline isn't about forcing yourself to focus. It's about retraining your reward system. Think of your attention like water flowing through a garden. Right now, most of that water is being diverted into shallow pools of instant gratification. To nurture real growth, you need to redirect that flow toward deeper, more meaningful channels. Ben, a medical student, discovered this the hard way. Despite his genuine passion for medicine, he couldn't study for more than 10 minutes without checking his phone. His grades were slipping, and his dream of becoming a doctor seemed to be slipping away. The turning point came when he realized his brain had been rewired for distraction. Instead of trying to force himself to study harder, he focused on resetting his dopamine system. He started with small changes, turning off notifications, deleting social media apps, and creating designated periods of deep focus. The first few days were uncomfortable. His mind felt foggy, and the urge to check his phone was almost physical. But by the end of the first week, something shifted. Reading medical texts became genuinely interesting again. Problem-solving felt rewarding rather than frustrating. His brain was relearning to find pleasure in real achievement. Here's how you can apply this same transformation. First, recognize that every time you choose instant gratification over meaningful work, you're not just wasting time. You're actively training your brain to resist discipline. Those harmless scrolling sessions are actually rewiring your neural pathways to seek easy rewards over real accomplishment. Second, understand that discomfort is part of the reset process. When you first reduce artificial stimulation, your brain will protest. This isn't failure. It's a sign that the reset is working. Just like a muscle burns during exercise, temporary discomfort is necessary for growth. Finally, focus on replacing, not just removing. Nature abhors a vacuum, and your brain needs healthy sources of dopamine. Engage in activities that provide natural rewards. Exercise, deep conversation, creating something with your hands, or achieving small but meaningful goals. Your brain is constantly learning, constantly adapting. Every action you take is either strengthening your capacity for discipline or undermining it. The good news is that you can consciously choose which path to reinforce. Here's your challenge for tomorrow. Commit to a one-day dopamine reset. Remove all unnecessary sources of artificial stimulation. social media, entertainment apps, unnecessary notifications. Instead, choose one challenging but meaningful task to focus on. Notice how your mind responds, how the urges come and go, and most importantly, how different it feels to work without constant digital interruption. This isn't about permanent deprivation. It's about recalibrating your brain's reward system so that discipline becomes not just possible, but natural. Remember, your attention is your most valuable resource. It's time to stop giving it away to things that don't matter and start investing it in what truly counts. Are you ready to reset your brain's reward system and discover what real focus feels like? Chapter 8. Finding power in the boring parts. You're staring at that task again, the one you know you need to do, the one that will move you closer to your goals. But there's no excitement, no spark, no rush of motivation, just the dull reality of showing up to do the work, again, and again, and again. This is where most dreams die, not in dramatic moments of failure, but in quiet moments of boredom when the glamour fades and reality sets in. The truth? Excellence lives in the mundane. Think about your biggest goal right now. Maybe it's starting a business, getting in shape, or mastering a skill. Whatever it is, here's what no one tells you. 90% of the work will be boring. The highlight reel you see on social media, that's the 10%. The real work happens in empty gyms, quiet mornings, and late nights when no one's watching. The human brain is wired to seek novelty. It's a survival mechanism from our ancestral past. New things meant potential rewards or dangers that demanded attention. But in our modern world, this same mechanism works against us. It makes us resist the very repetition that builds mastery. Think about Cristiano Ronaldo, widely regarded as one of the greatest footballers of all time. His training sessions aren't filled with spectacular goals and highlight-worthy moments. They're built on countless repetitions of basic drills, the same movements he's been practicing for decades. During his early days at Manchester United, Ronaldo would stay after training to practice the same free kick routine hundreds of times. His teammates had gone home. The stands were empty. No cameras, no crowds, no glory. Just Ronaldo, the ball, and endless repetition. One day, his coach found him practicing in heavy rain. When asked why he was still there, Ronaldo's response was simple: "I need to be better." Not more excited, not more motivated, just better. He understood that greatness isn't built in moments of inspiration. It's built in moments of repetition. This mindset separates winners from dreamers. Winners don't wait for excitement. They find meaning in monotony. They understand that boredom isn't an obstacle to success. It's the path to mastery. The science behind this is fascinating. When you repeatedly perform a task, your brain creates stronger neural pathways, making the action more automatic and efficient. This is why masters make difficult things look easy. They've embraced the boring work of repetition until excellence became their default state. But here's where most people get it wrong. They try to fight boredom. They look for ways to make the process more exciting, more varied, more entertaining. This is a mistake. The key isn't to eliminate boredom. It's to embrace it as a signal of progress. Think of boredom as a test. When something becomes boring, it means you've moved past the novice stage. You're no longer distracted by the newness. Now you can focus on the subtle details that lead to mastery. This is where the real growth happens. Hannah, a classical pianist, discovered this truth the hard way. She loved playing complex pieces, but struggled with daily scale practice. The repetition felt mind-numbing. Her practice sessions became irregular, and her progress stalled. The turning point came when she stopped trying to make scales exciting. Instead, she learned to find fascination in the minutiae, the precise angle of her fingers, the evenness of her tempo, the subtle differences in touch. She created a tracking system, noting tiny improvements in speed and clarity. What was once boring became a game of precision. She wasn't practicing scales anymore. She was pursuing perfection in its simplest form. Her progress accelerated, and surprisingly, she found herself looking forward to these focused sessions of deliberate practice. This transformation is available to you too. Here's how to embrace the power of boring. First, recognize that boredom is not your enemy. When you feel bored, it means you're pushing past the surface level. You're entering the territory where real mastery is built. Welcome this feeling as a sign of progress. Next, shift your focus from excitement to excellence. Instead of asking, "How can I make this more interesting?" ask, "What subtle improvements can I make?" This mindset turns monotony into a mission. Create concrete ways to measure progress, no matter how small. Track your reps, your time, your accuracy, anything that shows movement forward. This transforms repetitive tasks from mindless drudgery into deliberate practice. Finally, understand that embracing boredom is a competitive advantage. While others quit when the excitement fades, you'll keep going, accumulating small wins that compound into extraordinary results. Remember, the ability to stay consistent through boredom is a superpower. It's what turns amateurs into professionals, dreamers into achievers, and goals into reality. Your challenge for the next 3 days. Choose one repetitive task you've been avoiding because it's boring. It could be practicing an instrument, doing basic exercises, or working on fundamental skills in your field. Commit to doing it daily, but with a twist. Instead of seeking excitement, seek excellence in execution. Focus entirely on form, precision, and tiny improvements. Don't try to make it fun. Don't look for shortcuts. Simply show up and do the work with full presence. Notice how your relationship with boredom shifts when you stop fighting it and start using it as a tool for growth. Are you ready to embrace the boring path to extraordinary results? Chapter 9. The Zero Excuse Formula. You're about to make another excuse. Maybe you already have today. "I'm too tired. I'll start when things calm down. Just this once won't hurt." These seemingly innocent phrases are sabotaging your success more than any external obstacle ever could. Let's be brutally honest. Every excuse you've ever made has kept you exactly where you are. While others are achieving their goals, you're crafting eloquent explanations for why you can't do the same. It's time to face an uncomfortable truth. Your excuses aren't protecting you. They're imprisoning you. Your brain is masterful at creating convincing reasons to avoid discomfort. It's not your fault. It's biology. Our minds are wired to conserve energy and avoid potential pain or failure. But this ancient survival mechanism becomes a liability in modern life, where growth requires pushing beyond comfort zones. Every time you accept an excuse, you're programming your brain to seek the path of least resistance. It's like building a muscle. Except instead of strengthening discipline, you're strengthening your ability to quit. The more you give in, the easier it becomes to give up. Consider Terry Fox, whose story demolishes every excuse you've ever made. At 18, cancer took his right leg. Most people would have seen this as the ultimate excuse to give up on athletic pursuits. Instead, Terry decided to run across Canada to raise money for cancer research. Think about that for a moment. Not a 5K run, not a marathon. He committed to running across an entire country on one leg. Starting in St. John's, Newfoundland, Terry ran a marathon, 26.2 miles, every single day. Through rain, wind, and exhaustion, he kept moving forward on his prosthetic leg. The pain was excruciating. His stump would often bleed. Every step was a battle. But when asked about quitting, Terry said something profound. "I just wish people would realize that anything's possible if you try." He didn't see his circumstances as excuses. He saw them as reasons to push harder. For 143 days, Terry ran 3,339 miles. That's the equivalent of 128 marathons, on one leg, while fighting cancer. He only stopped because cancer had spread to his lungs, eventually taking his life. But not before he inspired millions and launched a movement that has raised over $850 million for cancer research. Now think about your excuses again. Too tired? Terry ran through exhaustion that most of us can't imagine. Too busy? He ran a marathon every day while managing his health and speaking to crowds. Too hard? He did it with one leg. This isn't about making you feel guilty. It's about showing you what's possible when you refuse to entertain excuses. You don't need to run across a country, but you do need to stop letting minor inconveniences derail your progress. Look at Jordan, a marketing professional who dreamed of starting his own agency. For 3 years, he told himself he'd start when things settled down at work, or when he had more savings, or when he felt more ready. These excuses felt legitimate, until he realized they were costing him years of potential growth. His breakthrough came when he adopted a zero-excuse policy. Instead of waiting for perfect conditions, he committed to working on his business for 1 hour every morning before his day job. Was he tired? Yes. Did he feel ready? Did it matter? Not anymore. Within 6 months, he had his first client. Within a year, he had enough business to quit his job. The obstacles hadn't disappeared. He just stopped letting them be excuses. The key is eliminating negotiation. When something is truly important, you do it. Period. No internal debate, no justifications, no delays. This sounds simple, but it's powerful. It's the difference between I'll try to work out today if I'm not too tired and I work out at 6 a.m. no matter what. Your challenge for the next 24 hours is this: zero excuses, complete elimination. Every time you catch yourself making an excuse, stop mid-thought and take immediate action instead. Feeling too tired to work out? Put your shoes on right now and do just 5 minutes. Too busy to work on your side project? Open your laptop this instant and work for 2 minutes. Chapter 10. The Instant Reset Protocol. You were crushing it. Everything was falling into place. Your habits were locked in. Progress was visible. And discipline felt natural. Then life happened. Maybe it was a nasty flu that kept you in bed for a week. Perhaps work exploded with unexpected deadlines. Or your routine got disrupted by travel, family obligations, or plain old burnout. Now you're stuck in that dangerous space between stopping and starting again. Each day that passes makes it harder to return. The guilt builds, the momentum fades, and that voice in your head gets louder. You've already missed so many days. What's one more? This is the moment where most people's dreams go to die, not because of the initial setback, but because they let that temporary pause become a permanent stop. They wait for the perfect moment to restart, not realizing that waiting itself is what makes restarting feel impossible. Think about it. How many times have you told yourself you'll get back on track on Monday, or after the holidays, or when things calm down? This pattern of postponing your restart is more damaging than whatever knocked you off course in the first place. The brain operates on momentum, much like a heavy flywheel. When it's spinning, keeping it going requires minimal effort. But once it stops, getting it moving again demands significant energy. The longer you wait, the more resistance builds up. This isn't just psychology, it's physics applied to human behavior. Consider Harriet Tubman's extraordinary journey. Most people know her as the heroic conductor of the Underground Railroad, but few understand the profound lessons her story teaches about resilience and restarting after setbacks. Tubman's first escape attempt from slavery ended in failure. She was caught, beaten severely, and suffered a traumatic head injury that would cause seizures and severe headaches for the rest of her life. Many would have seen this as a sign to give up. Instead, she attempted escape again, and succeeded. But her story of overcoming setbacks was just beginning. After reaching freedom, Tubman made the remarkable decision to return to slave territory repeatedly to guide others to freedom. Each mission came with devastating risks and potential setbacks. She faced severe weather, injury, illness, and constant danger of capture. Any single one of these obstacles could have been a reasonable excuse to stop. On one mission, she was forced to turn back due to impassable conditions. Another time, she had to hide for days with no food while pursued by slave catchers. She contracted malaria during another rescue attempt. Yet, after each setback, Tubman didn't wait to feel ready to restart. She simply continued her mission as soon as physically possible. Over 13 years, she conducted 19 rescue missions, freeing more than 70 enslaved people. Her secret wasn't avoiding setbacks. It was refusing to let them become permanent stops. Each time she faced an obstacle, she found a way to reset and continue forward, often immediately. This same principle applies to your journey with discipline. The key isn't preventing all interruptions. That's impossible. The key is developing what I call the instant reset protocol. The ability to restart immediately, without hesitation or negotiation. Most people make restarting harder than it needs to be. They try to compensate for lost time by doing too much too soon. They waste energy feeling guilty about the break. They overthink the perfect way to begin again. All of this creates unnecessary resistance that makes returning to their habits feel overwhelming. Observe Leo, a dedicated gym-goer who had maintained a consistent workout routine for 6 months. Then a brutal flu knocked him out for 2 weeks. As he recovered, the thought of returning to his full workout routine felt daunting. He kept waiting to feel strong enough to jump back in at full intensity. But the longer he waited, the more his fitness identity began to fade. The gym started feeling foreign. His brain began creating elaborate excuses about needing more rest. What started as a legitimate 2-week break was stretching into a month of inaction. Leo's breakthrough came when he realized he was overthinking the restart. Instead of waiting to feel ready for his normal routine, he applied the instant reset protocol. Show up immediately, start small, and build back gradually. The very day he had this realization, still feeling weaker than usual, he went to the gym. He didn't try to match his previous performance. He didn't beat himself up about lost progress. He simply showed up and did what he could, even if that meant lifting lighter weights or doing fewer sets. This immediate action, however small, broke the psychological barrier of restarting. The next workout was easier. Within 2 weeks, he was back to his normal routine, while others in his situation might still be waiting for the right time to begin again. The instant reset protocol works because it eliminates the biggest enemy of consistency: delay. Every hour you wait to restart makes the resistance stronger. But when you take immediate action, even if it's imperfect or scaled back, you short-circuit your brain's tendency to overcomplicate things. Here's how to apply the protocol in your own life. First, accept that setbacks are normal. They're not failures. They're part of the journey. The only real failure is letting a temporary pause become a permanent stop. Second, eliminate the waiting period. The moment you realize you've fallen off track, take immediate action. Don't wait for Monday. Don't wait until you feel ready. Reset now. Third, remove the pressure of perfection. Your first action back doesn't need to be impressive. It just needs to happen. If you're getting back to writing, write 1 paragraph. If you're returning to exercise, do 10 minutes. The goal isn't to make up for lost time. It's to restart the flywheel of momentum. Chapter 11. The Recovery Paradox. Why do some people work hard for years without breaking, while others burn out within months? The answer lies in a counterintuitive truth. The most disciplined people in the world don't just work harder than everyone else. They rest harder too. You've probably been taught that discipline means pushing through exhaustion, ignoring your body's signals, and grinding until you collapse. This mentality is why so many motivated people flame out before reaching their goals. They confuse intensity with sustainability, mistaking burnout for dedication. Think about how you approach discipline right now. Do you feel guilty when you take breaks? Do you push yourself to keep going even when your performance is clearly suffering? Do you wear exhaustion like a badge of honor? If so, you're following a recipe for failure, not because you lack commitment, but because you're misunderstanding how sustainable discipline actually works. The science is clear. Your brain and body operate in cycles of energy expenditure and recovery. When you ignore these natural rhythms, you're not being disciplined, you're being destructive. It's like trying to drive a car without ever stopping for gas, then wondering why you end up stranded on the side of the road. Look at the remarkable story of Masanobu Fukuoka, a Japanese farmer who revolutionized agriculture by challenging conventional wisdom about hard work. After years as a plant pathologist, Fukuoka had a profound realization. The endless cycle of plowing, fertilizing, and weeding that defined modern farming was actually working against nature, not with it. Instead of following the accepted practice of constant intervention and maximum effort, Fukuoka developed what became known as do-nothing farming. He eliminated plowing, stopped using chemical fertilizers and pesticides, and gave up weeding by tillage or herbicides. He even ceased flooding his rice fields. Traditional farmers thought he was crazy. How could doing less possibly lead to better results? But Fukuoka's yields matched or exceeded those of conventional farms while requiring minimal labor and no chemicals. His rice fields remained productive for over 40 years, without a single application of fertilizer or pesticides. The secret wasn't that Fukuoka worked less, it was that he worked smarter. By understanding and working with natural cycles rather than fighting against them, he created a system that was both more efficient and more sustainable. His methods proved that maximum effort doesn't always equal maximum results. This same principle applies to personal discipline. Just as Fukuoka found that forcing nature to conform to human schedules led to worse results, pushing yourself to maintain constant peak performance inevitably leads to diminishing returns. The most successful people understand this instinctively. They know that strategic recovery isn't a sign of weakness. It's a crucial component of long-term achievement. They plan their rest as carefully as they plan their work, creating sustainable cycles of effort and renewal that allow them to maintain high performance over years or decades. Think about Sophie, a startup founder who nearly lost everything by ignoring this principle. In her first year of business, she prided herself on working 16-hour days, 7 days a week. She saw rest as a luxury she couldn't afford and viewed exhaustion as proof of her commitment. 6 months in, the signs of burnout were clear. Her decision-making was deteriorating, her creativity had flatlined, and simple tasks were taking twice as long to complete. But instead of adjusting, she doubled down, convinced that working harder was the answer. The breaking point came when she made a series of costly mistakes that nearly bankrupted her company. Only then did she realize that her discipline was actually self-sabotage. With help from a business mentor, Sophie completely restructured her approach. She began implementing what she called her recovery revolution. She divided her workday into focused 90-minute blocks, separated by short renewal breaks. She made sleep non-negotiable, treating it as a vital business investment. She scheduled regular think days, where she stepped back from tactical work to focus on strategy. She built in daily practices for mental and physical recovery, from meditation to exercise. The results were transformative. Not only did her energy and creativity return, but her business actually grew faster because she was making better decisions and executing more effectively. By working with her natural rhythms instead of against them, she achieved more while suffering less. Your challenge for the next week is this: schedule recovery time as seriously as you schedule work. Block out specific periods for rest and renewal, and treat them as non-negotiable appointments with yourself. Don't wait for burnout to remind you that rest is a crucial part of discipline. Chapter 12. Beyond Willpower, the Power of Systems. You're doing it wrong. Every morning, you wake up and wage an internal battle with yourself. Should you exercise or sleep in? Should you work on your side project or scroll social media? Should you eat healthy or grab that sugary snack? This constant negotiation isn't discipline, it's a recipe for failure. Think about your current approach to consistency. How much energy do you waste trying to force yourself to do the right thing? How often do you rely on motivation or willpower to push through resistance? If you're like most people, you've turned discipline into a daily wrestling match with yourself. And here's the brutal truth: you're fighting a battle you can't win. Willpower isn't meant to be your primary tool for consistency. It's a finite resource that depletes with every decision, every temptation, and every moment of stress. The more you rely on it, the faster it drains. This isn't speculation. It's backed by decades of research on decision fatigue and ego depletion. Every time you force yourself to resist temptation or make a difficult choice, you're drawing from a limited pool of mental energy. This is why your discipline often crumbles by evening, even if you start the day with the best intentions. It's why you can stick to your diet perfectly until stress hits, then find yourself elbow deep in comfort food. Your willpower isn't weak. It's simply not designed to be your primary engine of consistency. Observe the remarkable story of Benjamin Franklin, whose approach to personal development was centuries ahead of its time. While most people know Franklin as an inventor, diplomat, and founding father, few realize that his greatest invention might have been his system for personal improvement. In 1726, at just 20 years old, Franklin didn't try to force himself to be more disciplined. Instead, he created what he called his bold and arduous project for moral perfection, a systematic approach to developing 13 virtues he deemed essential for success. But rather than relying on willpower to practice all 13 simultaneously, which he knew would be overwhelming, he developed an ingenious tracking system. Franklin created a small book with a page for each virtue. Each page had a grid, 7 columns for the days of the week, and 13 rows for the virtues. He would focus on one virtue per week, marking any violations with a small dot. This allowed him to concentrate his efforts strategically while maintaining awareness of all 13 virtues. What made Franklin's system revolutionary wasn't just its structure. It was his understanding that sustainable improvement requires more than just good intentions. He didn't wake up each day trying to be perfect. Instead, he created a system that made improvement inevitable by breaking it down into manageable pieces and tracking his progress methodically. "I was surprised to find myself so much fuller of faults than I had imagined," Franklin wrote, "but I had the satisfaction of seeing them diminish." This humble acknowledgement reveals a crucial truth. Systems succeed where willpower fails because they remove the burden of constant decision-making. Franklin's approach worked because it transformed discipline from a daily battle into a structured process. He didn't have to decide each morning whether to work on self-improvement. The system made that decision for him. He simply had to follow the plan he'd already laid out. The modern application of Franklin's insight is even more powerful. Today's most consistent performers don't rely on superhuman willpower. They create environments and routines that make success almost automatic. They understand that discipline isn't about forcing yourself to do hard things. It's about making the right things easier to do. Take Daniel, a talented musician who struggled for years to maintain a consistent practice routine. He'd start each day with good intentions, but somehow never found the right time to practice. He tried setting alarms, using reminder apps, and making promises to himself, but nothing stuck. The breakthrough came when he stopped trying to be more disciplined and instead focused on designing a foolproof system. Here's what he did. He positioned his guitar on a stand right next to his coffee maker, making it impossible to get his morning coffee without seeing his instrument. He connected his practice time to an existing habit. He would play for at least 5 minutes while his coffee brewed. He removed his TV remote and phone charger from the living room, making it easier to practice than to get distracted. He created a simple practice log where he'd mark an X for each day he played, building a visible chain of consistency. He set up his practice space the night before, eliminating any friction that might prevent him from starting. The results were transformative. Within weeks, practicing became as natural as brushing his teeth. He no longer had to decide whether to practice. The system made that choice for him. His playing improved dramatically, not because he suddenly developed more willpower, but because he made discipline automatic. Daniel's story illustrates a fundamental truth. The environment you create will shape your actions more powerfully than your intentions. If you have to rely on willpower to make the right choice, you've already set yourself up for failure. Think about your own goals. How could you redesign your environment to make success the path of least resistance? If you want to exercise in the morning, could you sleep in your workout clothes? If you want to write more, could you leave your laptop open to a blank document? If you want to eat healthier, could you remove all junk food from your home? The key is to make the right action easier than the wrong one. Don't trust your future self to make good decisions. They'll be tired, stressed, and tempted. Instead, create systems that make those decisions in advance. Remember, willpower is like a muscle. It can be strengthened with practice, but it will always fatigue under constant use. Systems, on the other hand, become stronger over time as habits become more ingrained and automatic. Your challenge for the next 7 days is this. Choose one important habit you've been struggling with. Instead of trying to force yourself to do it, spend 15 minutes designing a system that makes it almost impossible to fail. Remove all friction that stands between you and the desired action. Make the right choice the easy choice. Then, trust the system and watch as discipline becomes effortless. Chapter 13. turning failure into fuel. Every time you fail, a voice inside whispers, "Maybe you're not cut out for this." That voice has stopped more dreams than any external obstacle ever could. You've been conditioned to see failure as the end of the road, a sign to turn back, to settle for less. But what if that voice was lying to you? What if failure wasn't a stop sign, but a turning point? The most successful people in history share one surprising trait. They've failed more times than average people even try. Think about that for a moment. While most people let one setback define their limits, winners use each failure as a stepping stone to something greater. This isn't just motivational talk, it's backed by neuroscience. When you fail, your brain creates new neural pathways, learning patterns that help you avoid similar mistakes in the future. Each failure literally rewires your brain for success, but only if you stay in the game long enough to benefit from these lessons. Consider the remarkable story of Bessie Coleman. In the 1920s, she dreamed of becoming a pilot at a time when both her race and gender made that seem impossible. Every flight school in America slammed their doors in her face. For most people, this would have been enough rejection to abandon the dream. But Bessie saw failure differently. Instead of accepting these rejections as final, she turned them into fuel. She learned that French flight schools were more progressive in their admissions. There was just one problem. She didn't speak French. So what did she do? She took a job as a restaurant manager, saved her money, and spent her nights learning French from textbooks. When she finally had enough money and could speak French, she sailed to France. There, she earned her international pilot's license in just 7 months. But she didn't stop there. Returning to America as a certified pilot, she became a sensation in the airshow circuit, performing heart-stopping aerial maneuvers that left audiences in awe. Think about the layers of failure Bessie faced, rejected from every American flight school, lacking the language skills she needed, not having enough money. Each of these could have been a valid reason to quit. Instead, she used each obstacle as information, asking herself, "If I can't go through this barrier, how can I go around it?" This is the mindset that separates winners from everyone else. They don't see failure as a judgment on their worth. They see it as data. Every rejection, every setback, every no is just information pointing them toward a better approach. Let's look at Noah, a writer who dreamed of publishing his first novel. After spending 2 years crafting his manuscript, he sent it to literary agents and publishers. The rejections poured in, 37 of them. Each one stung, each one tested his resolve. But instead of letting these rejections destroy his dream, Noah did something different. He created a spreadsheet and analyzed every piece of feedback he received. He noticed patterns. Several agents mentioned his opening chapters were slow. Others said his protagonist wasn't relatable enough. A few pointed out that his genre wasn't clearly defined. Instead of defending his work or giving up, Noah treated this feedback like gold. He rewrote his opening chapters to start with more action. He deepened his protagonist's character development. He sharpened his genre focus. When traditional publishing still seemed out of reach, he researched self-publishing and launched his book independently. The result? His self-published novel gained traction online, built a faithful following, and eventually caught the attention of a major publisher. The same book that had been rejected 37 times became a bestseller, not because Noah got lucky, but because he used failure as a tool for improvement. Your challenge for the next 7 days is this. Take your biggest recent failure, the one that's been haunting you, making you question yourself. Write it down. Then, underneath it, list 3 specific lessons you learned from this experience. Finally, choose one action you can take today that builds on these lessons to move forward. Remember, failure is only final if you decide to stop. Otherwise, it's just feedback waiting to fuel your next breakthrough. Chapter 14. The Long Game. Have you ever wondered why most people abandon their biggest dreams? It's not because they lack talent or resources. It's because they're playing the wrong game. While everyone else sprints toward quick wins, true achievers understand a fundamental truth. Lasting success isn't measured in days or weeks. It's measured in years. Think about your most ambitious goal right now. the one that makes your heart race and your mind doubt. Now ask yourself, if achieving it took a decade of consistent effort, would you still pursue it? Your answer reveals whether you're ready for real achievement or just chasing temporary highs. The human brain is wired for immediate gratification. We crave quick results, instant feedback, and visible progress. But here's the paradox. The most meaningful achievements often require us to work against this natural inclination. They demand patience, persistence, and an unwavering commitment to showing up day after day, even when progress seems invisible. Look at the extraordinary story of Dashrath Manjhi, known as the Mountain Man of India. In 1960, his wife fell ill and died because their village was separated from the nearest medical center by a massive mountain. The only way to reach help was a treacherous 34-mile journey around the mountain range. Most people would have grieved and accepted this as an unchangeable reality. But Manjhi saw something different. He saw a problem that needed solving, no matter how long it took. With nothing but a hammer, a chisel, and an unshakable resolve, he began carving a path through the mountain. Every day for 22 years, Manjhi would wake before dawn and strike the mountain. The local villagers thought he was mad. Government officials ignored his efforts. Years passed with barely noticeable progress. But Manjhi kept going, driven by a vision that few could understand. Finally, in 1982, after more than 2 decades of solitary labor, Manjhi completed what seemed impossible, a 360-foot-long, 30-foot-wide road through the mountain. The journey to medical help was reduced from 34 miles to just 9 miles. What had once been a death sentence for his wife became a lifeline for future generations. This is the power of playing the long game. Manjhi didn't achieve his goal in a month, a year, or even a decade. But he understood something most people miss. Time will pass anyway. The only question is whether you'll use it to move towards something meaningful, or let it slip away while waiting for an easier path. The application of this principle goes far beyond moving mountains. Maya, a research scientist studying rare genetic disorders, faced a similar test of patience. After 3 years of experiments yielding no significant results, her funding was threatened, and colleagues suggested pursuing easier research paths. But Maya understood that breakthrough discoveries rarely happen overnight. Instead of abandoning her work, she refined her approach. She started tracking even the smallest observations, knowing that in science, apparent failures often contain hidden clues. She built systems to maintain her motivation during long periods without visible progress. Year after year, Maya kept pushing forward, adjusting her methods but never her commitment. In the 7th year of her research, everything changed. A pattern emerged in her data that led to identifying a key genetic marker. This discovery eventually led to a treatment protocol that has saved thousands of lives. The difference between Maya and her colleagues wasn't intelligence or resources. It was her willingness to stay in the game long enough for compound effects to take hold. While others jumped from project to project chasing quick wins, she understood that meaningful breakthroughs require time to develop. Chapter 15. The Non-Negotiable Mindset. Imagine a version of yourself that never quits. Not because it's easy, not because you're motivated, but because quitting isn't even in your vocabulary. What would change if discipline wasn't something you struggled to maintain, but simply who you are at your core? This isn't about motivation or willpower. It's about becoming someone who doesn't recognize quitting as an option. Just like breathing isn't optional. Just like your heart doesn't decide whether to beat today. The most disciplined people in history share a common trait. They don't try to be disciplined. They've eliminated quitting from their mental landscape entirely. When you remove quitting as a possibility, the only direction is forward. Observe Tenzing Norgay, one of the first 2 humans to reach the summit of Mount Everest. While many climbers saw Everest as a one-time challenge, a box to check off their bucket list, Norgay approached it differently. For him, climbing wasn't just something he did, it was who he was. Before his historic ascent with Sir Edmund Hillary in 1953, Norgay had already attempted to summit Everest 6 times. Each failed attempt would have broken most people's spirit. But Norgay didn't see them as failures. They were simply steps in his journey as a climber. What's most revealing about Norgay's mindset isn't the summit itself, it's what came after. While many successful climbers retired to write books and give lectures, Norgay continued climbing and guiding others for decades. The summit wasn't his goal. Being a climber was his identity. Even when he had nothing left to prove, he kept going because that's who he was. This is the difference between trying to be disciplined and embodying discipline. When discipline is part of your identity, you don't need motivation or external pressure. You act consistently because anything else would feel wrong. Take Ethan, a guitarist who spent years starting and stopping his music practice. He bought courses, set schedules, and tried various motivation techniques. Nothing stuck until he made a fundamental shift. Instead of trying to practice more, he started seeing himself as a professional musician, even though he hadn't earned a dime from music yet. This identity shift changed everything. When friends invited him out during his designated practice time, he didn't debate whether to go. A professional musician wouldn't skip practice for a casual hangout. When he felt tired or uninspired, he didn't negotiate with himself. A professional musician shows up regardless of mood. Within 6 months, Ethan had made more progress than in his previous 5 years combined. Not because he found some magical practice technique, but because he eliminated quitting as an option. His actions flowed naturally from his identity. This same principle applies to any area of life. Want to write consistently? Stop trying to write more and start being a writer. Want to maintain a fitness routine? Stop forcing yourself to exercise and start being an athlete. The actions will follow the identity. The key is making this shift permanent. You can't just declare a new identity. You have to prove it to yourself through consistent action. Each time you follow through, especially when it's difficult, you reinforce who you are. Each time you resist the temptation to quit, you strengthen your new identity. Your challenge for the next 30 days is simple but profound. Act as if quitting is not an option. Make every decision as the most disciplined version of yourself. When faced with a choice, ask yourself, what would someone who never quits do in this situation? Then do that. Don't focus on results yet. Focus on becoming someone who follows through no matter what. Because the person who never quits isn't special. They're just the person who decided that quitting isn't an option. Conclusion. You've come a long way. From questioning your ability to stay consistent to building unshakable discipline, you've transformed not just your actions, but who you are at your core. This journey hasn't been about finding motivation or forcing yourself to work harder. It's been about becoming someone who simply doesn't quit. Throughout this audiobook, you've discovered powerful truths that most people never grasp. You've learned that motivation is unreliable, but systems are unstoppable. You've seen how identity shapes behavior, and how small actions compound into extraordinary results. Most importantly, you've realized that discipline isn't about perfection, it's about persistence. The power of true discipline isn't just in what it helps you achieve, it's in who it helps you become. When you stop relying on motivation and start embodying discipline, every challenge becomes an opportunity. Every setback becomes a setup for a comeback. You no longer need external validation or temporary inspiration because you've built something far more valuable, unshakable consistency. But remember, knowledge isn't power. Applied knowledge is power. These tools are only valuable if you use them consistently. The question isn't whether you can be disciplined. You've already proven that. The question is, will you choose to be disciplined every single day, regardless of circumstances? This isn't about perfection. You'll face setbacks. You'll have days when everything seems to work against you. But now you know that these moments don't define you. Your response to them does. You have the power to turn any obstacle into an opportunity, any failure into feedback, any setback into a setup for success. The world is full of people waiting for the perfect moment, the right feeling, the ideal circumstances. But you're different now. You understand that the perfect moment is now. The right feeling is commitment. The ideal circumstance is whatever situation you're in. Will you be the person who follows through, no matter what? The choice, as always, is yours. But now you have everything you need to make that choice count. The question isn't whether you can, it's whether you will. Thank you for listening and for investing in yourself. I believe in you. Your potential is endless. Now go. Thank you for listening and for investing in yourself. I believe in you. Your potential is endless. Now go out there and create the life you deserve.